today we are finally going to be able to show you how to do the right-hand exhaust manifold on the Ford 4.6 liter and 5.4 liter 3-valve engines. As you probably know, based on you watching this, these are very common to break studs on them and cause exhaust leaks. It's a very annoying leak, especially when the engine's cold. Makes your car sound like a hunk of junk. So what we're going to do today is show you exactly how to do it on a 4.6 liter 3-valve found in the Ford Explorer, but you can also use the techniques that I show in here, all my tips and tricks, and even the torque sequence for the 5.4 liter 3-valve found in the F-150. Now in the future, if I get F-150 in here, I'm doing the exhaust manifold on that one. Of course, I'll record that separately so you know exactly how to deal with it in there. But on the F-150s, it's actually easier than on this one, the Explorers, with the 4.6 liter 3-valves in them. And the reason being is the frame location, the frame design, and of course the shock mounting, the shock tower gets in the way big time on the 4.6 liter, so I'll show you that here in a second. Now what's common on the Explorers is for the two front studs on cylinder number 1 to break off, and you may be looking at yours going, nah, mine's not broken, but it still has a sound. Is it that? Is it that? This noise often gets misdiagnosed as a lifter tick. What you got to realize is there's so much rust in there, and it's just kind of like separated inside of there that it actually holds on and it looks good. But it's actually lost its clamp load, and as soon as you go to take them off, they'll just kind of fall right off. The head will just fall right off on them, and I'll show you that also. So once the clamp load is lost, of course you get the exhaust leak, that's fine, but you also, over the different heat cycles, you actually get a warped manifold, especially the front pipe on there on the 4.6 liter 3-valves. So it'd behoove you to go ahead and change the exhaust manifold and the gaskets and the studs all while you're in here, because it's a real pain to get in there. You're dealing with lots of rust, and it's an expensive repair even if you're doing it yourself. The aftermarket manifolds are around $80 to $100, whereas the Ford ones are around $300 something. So I can see not going to that extent, but definitely $80 to $100 for an aftermarket. I would definitely get it and be all new. It comes with a new heat shield on there and all that stuff. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and show you exactly how to do it on the 4.6 liter 3-valve found in the Ford Explorers, so you can see exactly what I've learned over the years as far as tips and tricks to get into these tight, confined areas, and more importantly, in the end, how to get into those areas and torque it down properly. It's the most important part of this whole process. So let's get to it. And this is what it sounds like. Put you right here so you can listen. It's gonna be loud. Okay, first things first, when you get access to the exhaust manifold through the wheel well here, so we're going to pull the wheel off, we're going to jack it up, pull the liner out, all that just to get access to even be able to see it. So let's go ahead and jack it up. Now we got it jacked up, it's always a good idea to have a wheel chock or a parking brake on so it doesn't roll back on you. Let's pull the lug nuts off. They're 19 millimeter on here, and if you don't have an impact like so, you should break torque on all these before you actually pick it up off the ground so you can get them off. Now me personally, I leave the jack with a little bit of pressure on it, and the jack's out of there, out of the way. All this is free floating. We can get to work. Okay, we got our tire out of the way. Now we need to get the whole fender liner out of the way. And there's a bunch of push pins like that. You'll see them all over the place, like this one right here. And there's screws all around it also. You'll see them. You can also follow along on here. Some Phillips screws here, and one right here. And then there's a push pin right here. Get behind the front piece, okay? You just gotta work it through. They're huge. And don't worry, all that stuff is super flexible. So what about all the noises you're hearing? And then there's one right here. You can see that one. And once you pull it out, go back, grab some more of it like that. And if you're unsure, you just keep going around. Like down here, there's another one that holds all this together. And a lot of times they'll break like that. They're very, very fragile. The heads are anyways. Stuff out of here. It's not gonna break. Get it out. Now up in here, you'll see a bunch of the screws again. You'll see them all over. Just follow them down. Okay. Should be one up here too. And all these screws should be the same length. You see us flopping around now. And we're back to these. There's a couple of push pins up top here. Big boys that hold it in. One there. One back there, barely holding it on. Whole thing's loose, and then over here, push you in a little further. There we go. Got a couple push pins right here that go into the frame. You just want to pull this one out, okay, and leave these ones in. And they're in there, and they're pretty freaking long, so they're a real pain to get out. Now here on the back side, there's a screw right in this area that holds this liner. It's like the last screw. So we need to pull this pin out. Okay. Best you can. So we can get it out of the way just far enough. That, and then you should be able to pull some of these out like this. And then we're going to peel this back enough, like so, and you'll see a screw behind here. And once that last screw's out of here, this whole thing should just come right out. And then we're going to take all of our fasteners from this particular part we took off, and we're going to put it with it, so you know. And now you can see a whole heck of a lot more. Let's get you up in here. And you can start spraying everything inside of here. You can see these ones back here are not too bad. Even that's not too bad, right? It's up in here. Well, I can't even show you. That's how bad it is. So let's start getting the bolts out we can get to and go from there. Okay, let's go ahead and get this harness right here out of the way and off our agenda. The whole process to getting to this is getting everything out of the way. Let's just pull this connector off here. There we go. Oh yeah. And then we'll take this one and jam it way up in here. Let's spray the two downpipe studs and nuts on here. Now these are pretty hard to get to if you're underneath this. So up here is probably the best option. We can get this one off up here, whereas this one's gonna be a little more difficult to get to, but it's a straighter shot down below with a swivel. And these are 15 millimeter. We'll start loosening those because those should come off while we spray the rest of the studs that we can see on here. If you can, see this shield? If you can, get it the heck out of here. You know, it's just another thing that's in our way, so we can't see everything. All right. Now these studs on here are 13 millimeters, so let's go ahead and test the waters and see how bad they really are with this one we can get to. Well, let's get this guy loosened. It's going to take quite a bit, so I suggest you have a 3/8 in here you're getting in here. You put a cheetah bar on the end of it. There you go. And after a while, once you loosen it, you should be able to use the impact in here if you have a right-hand impact like this Milwaukee right here to finish getting it out of there. Otherwise, it's very long-winded. Now once the one side that's easy to get to is loose, the other side is a lot easier. There's not all this tension on here anymore. This whole thing is flip-flopped in here now. So it's kind of loose. You only have to deal with corrosion now for this other one over here. All right, let's try this one more time with a 1/2 inch straight on. Nice. Now the other thing you'll notice is that the stud and nut are pretty much together forever. So when you start taking these nuts out, the stud and the nut's going to come out of the cylinder head, which is useful. Now these front ones you can access right through here. You can see it up in here. And that front one right there, those are the ones that break. That one and the bottom one down there. And like you see that one popped out of there, this is what came out of there. Okay, this right here, there's part of the stud and the nut, and that's how it comes out. They'll come out very easy. So you put a ratchet on there, you think you're getting lucky. In all reality, it's just finally coming out of there. Now to get these front ones out, you use a 1/4 inch ratchet with a 13 mil, obviously. And you'll turn just like this. Everything's just fine. This is great. Great. Maybe they're just loose. Maybe they're just loose. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, just hold them by a thread. See that? And there it is once again. And it always seems to be the front two. That's why we say just go ahead and just start pulling the cylinder head, because they're near impossible to get out of there. And it really sucks, but that's the truth of the matter. Now for other ones like these back ones, you want to use a long extension so you can get in there kind of straight and they'll come out. Now if these didn't have the issue with the two front, behind that the shield on there, the shock tower, you'd probably be able to do this in the car, no problem. This one's ultra loose. Let's see if we can get it out. And that's how they usually come out, stud and nut together. Now the rest of these ones up top here you can get to with your 1/4 inch ratchet and 13 millimeter from the top. Those will come out pretty easy also. Okay, let's get the air box out of the way and stuff like that so we can get better access to those top nuts on there. We'll start pulling these lines off the air intake snorkel here. There's another PCV one over here. Get them out of the way. And we're actually going to pull this off together, air box and all. Disconnect your mass airflow sensor. Unclip the 3 clips on your air box. Where's the other one at? Way up underneath here. We're going to unscrew this clamp. It's 8 mil, 5/16. Wiggle this puppy off of here. And this monstrosity out of here. Alright, in order to get the lower air box out of here, we're going to pull the coolant reservoir. Pull a line over here. Should be some 10mm bolts right here. And get those off. Makes it much easier pulling the reservoir out of there. Big time. Off. One over there. Which is an 8 mil. For some reason. And this whole thing comes out of here. And once it's up, you get your cat claw in here to this harness right here for the mass airflow sensor. Much easier to pull it off now when it's up and out of there. Okay, now this thing, so you pull up on this side and then out. Like so. Put these 2 cone looking things back into the fender. Okay, back over here on this side, we're going to get this coolant hose out of the way, the heater hose. Just grab right here, you see that? And pull up. You can literally get it out of here. And then you can get access to them down in here. Let's see if I can get you a better shot. Now what's best to use on these is a box end wrench like this to get it off of there, 6-point preferably. Or what I have used for leverage and pass through, it's also 6-point, is my serpentine belt tool. So let's see if we can get this one off. It's coming pretty nicely too. Now these ones, you can tell they have some resistance to them. They're coming off. They're not just loose and falling off like the front 2. And that's the big problem with the Explorers, is the front 2 always break, like you just saw, and it's near impossible to drill them out. Now what you want is for the stud nut to come out, and most of these do that. And this one seems to be doing the same thing. That way, when you pull the manifold out, it's easy. You know, the whole thing just slides right out of here. You're not fighting the studs to get it out. It's a real pain. If there are studs left, I recommend you take them out with the stud installer and remover. I'll link to that down below in the description also. The one from OTC that I found has worked over and over again. It grips, it works, reverse, forward, doesn't matter. And it has the most popular sizes in it also. See, this is nice. It's just coming right out. It's long-winded, but it comes out, you know. Either way you look at it, exhaust manifolds are no fun. Okay, so all the nuts and studs are out on the top except for the very back one. That one has a stud sticking in it yet. Now we need to work on the lowers. The lowers can be really tricky to get to. A lot of guys pull starters and everything else. I don't recall myself ever pulling a starter to get one of these out here. So I'll show you a few tips and tricks to get in the second one back, the front one? No, the second one back on the bottom with extensions and swivels and stuff like that. Real quick, I want to show the stud installer remover on that back one on top though. Okay, let me show you this sweet little kit from OTC. That's a stud remover and installer kit. And if if you can see it or not. Look at that. It's got all the most popular sizes in there. Now there's a SAE and there's a metric set. Well, most of the Ford stuff is metric, so guess what? This one's metric. So just grab whichever one works, fits in there. It'll fit over. Okay. Like so. Okay. You'll notice when you turn to the right or the left, the cam lock system inside of there will lock onto it and bite into it. But it's roller cam type deal where it won't ruin the threads on there. It's not like a sharp teeth setup. See, simply put it over it, okay, and it'll grip the full length of the stud, and you turn, okay. There we go. The stud's in there good. And then you simply take it out like any other nut or bolt. And there it is. Okay, at this point, let's loosen this lower nut right here so we can fully disconnect the manifold from the Y pipe for the rest of the exhaust on there. Now what I do a lot is use a cutoff wheel. I'll get down in here and I'll just zing right through that thing just to get it out of here. And you're going to be changing that stud on there anyways, if it's hard enough. This one up here is hard to get to with an extension from down below, but this one, from what I recall, is not too bad. So we're going to try the extension and swivel first. Now once you get the other nut loose, you can just go in here like this and you knock it away, and your manifold is separate now. Okay, what you're looking at here is the bottom side of the manifold. The idea here is to use a deep well and then a swivel, as you can see right there, and a long extension, so you can put a 1/2-inch breaker bar out here. And here's an example. I'm out here with the extension and the breaker bar where I can have free range to really crank on it. I'm holding it up here to keep it dead on. At this point, it already broke torque. We have full swing. We can get it out. Now this works for this one and this one, okay? Right here, the other back one. But that middle one, that one's gonna be special. This one's almost out. See, the rest of these, they come out, you know. Here's another one. Whole thing comes out. And the same thing for this one. Same exact procedure. This one's a little more dead on. And I'm back here at the 1/2-inch. 3/8 drive extensions, we get in there. And then the 1/2-inch adapter back here, the 1/2-inch ratchet. Okay, that one sliced the old finger a little bit. Yeah, but it came loose, so it's worth it. And now we'll switch over to the 3/8 ratchet, so we can get up in here and get it out that much faster. At this point, there's only one left we have to contend with, but the front two are still broken. Okay, now for the lower one in the middle, you slide underneath the vehicle. Okay, slide up in here, and you go between the front axle, which is right here, and the steering gear to where it lies up there. And if I get my finger up in here, I can point to exactly where the stud's at. You can see it up in there. I know this lighting is horrible, but if you look at it through here, That's where you're going up and through. So I'll show you how it looks. You can just imagine the bolt up in there. Okay, you can see it good there. So we're going to get our long extension, swivel, and deep 13 once again. We're going to come up through here and get it on there. Okay, and it's straight enough where you'd be able to turn it. It may pop every once in a while, but you'll be able to break torque on it. Now my universal's binding up, I went free, and the same thing. It's best to get the length of it as straight as possible. So I'll get you out of the way. And there it is, the whole manifold's free. It's ready to come out. Now if all the studs are out, this thing should come out pretty easy. You know, it's pretty compact in here. You know, it's a real basic manifold, nothing more to it. Now if you're super lucky and these front studs over here did not break, you can go ahead and start cleaning this up. So we're gonna blow it out, light pressure, paying special attention to your bolt holes in the head here. And then we're going to also blow into the exhaust port. And then you proceed to stuff the holes. Flush like that, you see that? Well, now you can see it. With paper towel in there. And I like these blue ones because you can definitely see it easily inside of this area here. I mean, it stands out like crazy. Won't forget it that way. And then the absolute best thing to use, especially on something like this, for access and quick removal, is these white sanding discs, the fine grit sanding disc. This will get all the corrosion off and scale and like so, that quick. The thing about these is use high speed and light pressure and keep moving. And then I go over with Scotch Brite too, like so, and then I'll smooth it out even better. Once again, brake clean. Okay. Nice and new. And once you're done, pull your rag out and all debris should come out with it. Either way, I stick my wand back in there and clean it out, just to be safe. Okay, now once you're done cleaning the cylinder head, it's going to look something like this. There's going to be a lot of staining and pitting all over the place. Don't worry about it. Don't try grinding that stuff off there. It's perfectly normal after many years of use like this. What you want to concentrate on is the sealing ring around the exhaust manifold itself to be absolutely perfect like this one is. And the rest of this, just get off all the rust and scale and dirt so there's a nice, flat, clean surface for that new exhaust manifold to bolt up to. Now once you're done, you're satisfied, it looks like this, okay? You want to go ahead and blow out all your exhaust ports and your bolt holes right here so you can get the threads nice and clean and any debris out of there. And then we're going to go over it one more time with a shop rag, spray the brake clean, and we're going to wipe across here to get this perfectly clean and ready for the manifold. But don't go ahead and start throwing the exhaust gasket and the studs on there just yet. You want to do that with the exhaust manifold because of the tight space in here. So we're going to do it all at once, and I'll show you how. And one other thing, make sure you have an E7, which is an external Torx like this. It's 1/4-inch drive. You can get cheap little sets. I'll link to them down below. And what that'll do is it'll go into the end of the stud here, and it'll allow us to install a stud onto here. They should all pretty much have no problem going in. You want to make sure of that before we actually start fighting it with the manifold in the way. So like this one's a little bit tight, so I'm going to run it in there, and we're going to kind of clean the threads. Okay, now before you go over to put the manifold onto the car, make sure you have all your studs, nuts, and washers from Ford that are all stainless steel or coated otherwise, all ready to go. You're going to need 8 per side, so you're going to need 8 of each of these. And then we're going to need our exhaust gaskets. I prefer Ford, the multi-layer steels like this. And what you need to concentrate on these, what you need to make sure of on these, is the lower portion of it here is flat, and that matches the exhaust port on the cylinder head. Otherwise, these are pretty much universal. You can flip-flop them back and forth, okay? But me, I just keep the Ford logo out like this, bolt them up, and I've never had a problem. But I'm pretty sure they're universal. Just make sure that flat part matches the exhaust port on there. Besides that, get all this ready over there by the car, ready to go, and we'll get it up into place, and we'll start threading a few studs into there to hold it in place, and then we'll just go from there with the rest of the studs and nuts and washers. Okay, onto the new manifold. Let's get it ready to install in the vehicle. Make sure it has a new heat shield on it, just like this one does. This is very important. Your old one probably disintegrated off of there, and you want to make sure you have a full heat shield on there to protect all the engine components from direct radiated heat. So make sure it's on there, and then we're going to get the 2 studs for the downpipe screwed into here. Now, if you buy a Dorman unit, they're probably going to come with it like this one did. Whereas the Ford unit will not come with them, the ones I've seen. So make sure you have that on hand, because your old ones are going to be stuck in the old manifold, and they're going to be really tight in there. It's not worth torching them and everything else. So get 2 new ones, and we'll screw them in by hand, okay, until they bottom out. And then you just need to snug them up with a vice grip on here, on the flats that are provided on there. And just snug it up a little bit, okay? And you'll know when it's tight enough on there. You can alternately do it with the stud installer, same way. It'll grip it, and we'll tighten it. And you'll feel when it stops, you know. That's as far as you need to go. Right there. Okay. And this way, the whole manifold is ready to go while we go into there. You don't want to put these in afterwards. It's a real pain, even though you'll get more clearance going into the cavity in there. So at this point, this thing is ready to go. Let's go ahead to the car and bolt it up. Alright, now it's time to get the manifold up in here. We're going to set it up into here, get it into place, and then we're going to bust the gaskets out and the studs. So just make sure you just keep moving it around and get past different areas. Like I just got past the downpipe. And it's a little harder getting up in here with the shield on there, but it's not too bad. So you keep wiggling it. And there it is. So we'll just put it right there, and that'll hold it in place. And now we're going to get that first stud started so we can start holding it in place. Now just remember, on these gaskets, the flat part goes at the bottom. Otherwise, everything's just about universal. I like to keep the Ford logo out. That's just me. I don't think it makes a difference though. So we'll get this one started up in here. Okay. And all you got to do is lift it into place. And we're going to screw it in by hand. And that's because it's so hard to get up in here that you can easily cross thread it, especially with the way the manifold on there. So we're going to get to the easy ones first. Okay, this one's definitely going in, so we're going to start tightening it with our 1/4" ratchet and E7 socket until it bottoms out in there. And we'll torque all these studs in the head later. Let's just get them in, get the manifold in place, and we can worry about a little torquing later. And you see these are long-winded, and that's the whole reason why is because they got to have that bite into the cylinder head. That's why I said it's very important to blow out the holes and make sure the old stud's extracted, etc. Okay, so that's on there. For right now, we're just going to put a nut on there, no washer. And then I'll hold it. We can start working on the next stud in there. Okay, now with your right hand up here, holding the front of the manifold, we're going to adjust it up or down so we can get this next stud in right here. Yeah, you should be able to see it with plenty of light. And again, they should all go in by hand. This one's really nice. And then we'll repeat the same procedure for the front 2 ports on there. And you want to do this while it's all loose still, so we're not bending the gasket and going in. Okay, once all your studs are into the cylinder head by hand and then tighten with the 1/4" ratchet, they're down, they're firm, they're nice and snug. We're going to torque them to 106 inch-pounds. And some of these you may need to use extensions to get that torque wrench in there. And once they're on, once they're torqued, what you can do is put your washer on there and your nut, like so. Push up a little bit and put it on there as far as you can by hand so it holds. And we can move on to the next one all the way down, top and bottom. And we can come back and start tightening down these nuts in the torque sequence. Okay, now installing the studs across the top side of the manifold here all the way down is pretty easy and straightforward, except for this one. This one's kind of a pain right here just because the shield's in the way, but it's doable. And then the front cylinder is really easy to get to, top and bottom, but then you have the 3 on the bottom side here that are buried up inside of here. And this is why a lot of guys pull the starter out. I think it's more of a pain to pull a starter out just to get to those 3. I think it's not worth it, because the starter is such a pain to get out on these vehicles. These ones and the F-150 is just a real pain, especially that 3rd bolt up in there. So what I do is something like this. I'll get to the bottom ones by going like this. Contort my body like this, and then you get in here and you can start doing all 3 of them by hand. You get a feel for it. Okay, they're definitely in there. You got 3, 4 threads you're in the head. This one, and then this one. Okay, no big deal. It's definitely a lot faster to do it that way than pull the starter. And then you simply get up in here with an extension like this and a universal and your E7 external Torx bit on there. Get it up in there, line it up with your other hand, get it onto there. Okay, and at this point we're a couple of threads in, so you're not really tweaking the stud. And with the angle of the universal on there, should be plenty where we're not putting no stress in the stud as far as side loading it. And then you just simply screw it into here. And this will work on all 3 of them in there. And it makes it a lot faster, especially because of the extension. We can really get some good swings in here and get this thing done. Okay, now once you have all those studs in and torqued down, we can put our washers and nuts on there so they're hand tight. And then we're going to come back through with a 1/4-inch ratchet for these tight areas. And we're going to tighten them down by hand in sequence, in torque sequence. And then we're going to come back through and actually torque them down to spec on there. Now, the torque sequence on here is very, very simple. It's the same thing for the 4.6 and the 5.4 liter. You go top, bottom, top, bottom, all the way to the front. And that's all there is to it. So it's very easy to remember. You just start from the back, the top, bottom, and we're just going to tighten them down by hand with a 1/4-inch, which will easily be underneath the 18 foot-pound torque spec. We'll get the thing settled and seated in here, and then we can come back through and do an additional torquing on there. And it's going to be tight getting into some of these areas, but everything's new, so it should come together very nicely at this point. Okay, we're in the home stretch now. This is the easy part. Let's get it torqued and get this back together and get out of here. The torque spec on these is a 216 inch-pounds, and we're going to do the same exact torque sequence, top, bottom, all the way to the front up here. So do whatever you got to do with the extensions and deep wells so you can get in here. Now, one thing to note is when you use extensions that are, are pretty long, you're going to start losing your torque accuracy. So it's best to do it directly with the socket, especially on an exhaust manifold, if at all possible. And you'll see, like I said, these things, it's quite a bit. There we go. And that's why I want to make sure that these studs are all the way in there, because this thing's going to have some pull on it once it's done. Most of these bottom ones, you can just use a 3-inch extension, and it fits perfectly in here, and that won't affect any torque reading. Oh, yeah. You can see already it's it's compressing the gasket, so this one had quite a few turns to get the torque down. Now once you start getting deep inside of here, you're going to want to go through with your other hand from the other side, the other arm, and stick it through and stabilize the extension and socket so it's fully on the nut. And then this side you can just pull it till it torques out. Okay, up here on the top side in cylinder number 2, what you're going to notice is there's no room for a deep well socket, and your stubby is too short because the heat shield's in the way. What you want to do is put the regular standard size socket on there on your torque wrench before the ball detent on there, and it'll become a mid-length socket then without having to go run out and buy one. And it'll be just the right amount of length on there to get in there and torque it. And be done with it. Just don't lose it coming out. There we go. Now on cylinder 1 on the front two here, top and bottom, you're going to do the same trick where you put it before the detent, and that seems to work best. I guess in this one you can use the deep, but this works just as well with the same socket as earlier. Now at this point, going from back to front, torquing it down to this high of a torque value, it has a tendency to settle the actual manifold and the gasket itself. So what I do is I go over it in any random order, going all the way back, and make sure everything's still tight to spec. Make sure it didn't settle too much. Okay, at this point the exhaust manifold's fully installed, done, retorqued, rechecked. We just need to finish the connection to the rest of the exhaust system here. Now these studs, we installed them earlier, they're tight, they're good to go. What I like to do is put a little bit of anti-seize on them just to protect the exposed threads on there, okay? The road salt and everything else, in case you need to take it off at a later date, it'll kind of protect them on there. And it'll make it a lot easier putting the nuts on here also. So let's slide our ring up onto here. Should line up fairly easy like that. And we'll put our new nuts on here. Now the way to tighten this up so it's leak free and mates up perfectly is to tighten down the nuts top and bottom evenly as it goes up. We're going to snug them up by hand and then we're going to torque them down to 30 foot-pounds. Alright, now at this point the rest of the installation is just the reversal of removal. Put all the pieces back together except for the AC compressor over here. If you took that down to get access to drill out, or if you sucked it down and pulled lines off like I did, that should go back together now before you start putting a liner back into here. Okay, so it's been sitting overnight. We're going to go ahead and test it the next morning and make sure it's still nice and quiet even on a cold start. Now what I do a lot of times after a full heat cycle on these is I will go back and retorque each one of the bolts on there in sequence just to make sure nothing loosened up down there. So go ahead and start it. Alright. Nice and quiet. That's the way it should sound. Alright, so that wasn't that bad on this one. Now, if you have the problem with a two front brake, I'm sure you will on the Ford Explorers, I have a separate video on how I got into there to actually drill them out and the kind of extractor I used and what actually works to get them out without jacking the engine up or pulling a cylinder head or anything oddball like that. So some people pull the starter to get up in there, those lower studs and all that. I wouldn't go to that extent unless you actually have an issue where you rounded off the nut, everything just keeps breaking down there and you just can't get in there to get the stud or nut out so you can get the manifold out of the way to start working in there. Otherwise, leave the starter in at first and just go through it just like I've shown with my extensions and my swivels and the way I do it, and you should be able to get them out of there. The most important point is use that Croil oil or the Mopar rust penetrant. Spray it on there a couple days before, let the vehicle sit and keep coming back and spraying it so it has that chance to get in there, do its work, and actually creep into there and into the threads on there. Besides that, you're bound to have those two front brake on there or the two in the rear and the 5.4 liter brake on there and be ready to extract them. I'm guaranteed they're broken, and that's the whole point. You're going in there and changing in the first place. So just be ready for it. Have the extractors on hand, have the drill bits on hand, have the right angle drill on hand, all that kind of stuff so you're ready for it, or else the vehicle's be down for a long time because finding the proper quality extractors usually have to order online. So hopefully this helps. I know this is a video that's been a long time coming. I'm finally getting into these videos that were just too hard to record in the dealership. Now I'm on my own. I can do anything I want. It's absolutely great. So hopefully this helps.